Our top stories tonight. The final vote count is in for Wednesday's local elections. The ruling party wins 8 and the main opposition 9 of the 17 main contests for city mayors and provincial governors. And no winner and no loser is the general consensus among analysts here. They say the local elections are a draw amid rising public indignation over the government's handling of April's deadly ferry disaster. And Koreans' income level grew at the slowest pace in 2 years in the first quarter of 2014, a mere 0.5% compared to the quarter before. Early edition begins now.
I see trees of green, red
늘 남편 먼저,
I see them
늘 자식 먼저.
for me and
레이디 퍼스트라는 말을 믿고 살아온 당신. 오늘만큼은 세상 누구보다 당신이 먼저입니다.
한 분 한 분 특별하게 모시겠습니다.
Excellence in Flight, Korean Air.
It's 5 a.m. in New York, 4 p.m. in Bangkok, and 6 on Thursday, the 5th of June here in Seoul. Hello, this is Early Edition at 6. Live from Seoul, I'm Moon Gon-young.
And I'm Daniel Choi. Thank you for joining us. Well, the results are out. The result of yesterday's local elections, that is, and both sides, the main political parties in the nation, have reasons to celebrate. Pop the bubblies, whatnot.
Right, in some sense, the ruling party is seen as having fared pretty well as it avoided a huge backlash from last month's deadly ferry disaster, while the main opposition could find some consolation, I suppose, in winning the nation's most high-profile race, that being for Seoul City Mayor. Our Park Ji-won has the details.
The election results for the 17 heads of local governments show the ruling Saenuri Party victorious in 8 regions and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy in 9. Although Seoul was taken by the main opposition camp, the ruling party fared well in the metropolitan area. The party won the hotly contested Incheon mayoral race and Korea's most heavily populated province of Gyeonggi-do. However, the main opposition party claimed victories in the central region in both Chungcheongdo provinces, the new administrative city of Sejong and Daejeon City. Considering these regions traditionally lean more moderate conservative, the main opposition party will be buoyed by its strong showing there. The nation's southwest and southeast regions didn't veer from their traditional preferences, although rival party or independent candidates had strong showings in the liberals' power base of Gwangju and the southern port city of Busan. As for Seoul, incumbent Mayor Park Won-soon from the main opposition party beat his rival Chung Mong-jun.
This is a victory of all citizens who called for a fundamental change following the Seoul ferry disaster. It's a victory for all citizens who work honestly.
I want to thank the citizens of Seoul. I humbly accept the choice of the people. I hope Mayor Park will lead Seoul by taking on the difficult situations facing the city.
The Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces were the last 2 provinces to confirm winners due to very tight races. In Gyeonggi-do, the ruling party's Nam Kyung-pil edged to victory in the governor's race against his rival by less than 1 percentage point. In Gangwon-do, incumbent Governor Choi Mun-soon also scored a tight win. During the local elections, 17 education chiefs were also elected, 13 of which are considered progressive. Seoul's new education superintendent will be Cho Hee-yeon, a liberal professor, after beating out 2 strong conservative candidates. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Well, there was no clear winner between the main rival parties in the June 4th local elections, and that can be interpreted in a number of ways.
Well, Na Young reports on what analysts are reading into the results.
The public raised the red flag against the ruling party while keeping the opposition on its toes. Experts say the local election results reflect public anger toward the current administration's handling of April's Seoul ferry disaster that claimed hundreds of lives. But they add, not handing over a landslide victory to the opposition means people are willing to give the Park Geun-hye administration a second chance.
We thank the people who have supported us and given us another chance. We will continue to carry out reforms within our party.
By snatching 9 of the 17 seats up for grabs, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy has gained an upper hand for now. But the very narrow win, despite favorable conditions, indicates that the public is still wary of fully trusting the opposition party.
We will do our best to shed light on the truths behind the ferry disaster and focus on establishing fundamental solutions.
The upcoming July by-elections will be another opportunity for the rival parties to gauge public sentiment. Whether the ruling party can strike a chord with the public through President Park's soon-to-be-conducted cabinet reshuffle will be key in regaining support. The NPAD, in the meantime, will have to show and prove that its co-leadership is solid in order to avoid losing momentum. Na Hyun-kyung, Arirang News.
The Korean people exercised their democratic right to vote in record numbers for local elections on Wednesday.
So what do they have to say about the results one day later? Well, our Shin Se-min went to the streets to find that out.
Public reaction to the results of Wednesday's local election has been somewhat divided, but all seem to agree that April's ferry accident was a deciding factor.
For this local election, I was greatly influenced by the Seoul ferry tragedy when casting my vote. I want more responsible leaders to represent me and my thoughts.
Simply put, I voted because I want a just society for all. Many politicians seem to ignore the voices of the people. Take the Seoul ferry accident, for example. Instead of leaders trying to save face, I want them to realize what they are missing and have already missed.
The elections were for local representatives, but were seen as a barometer of public sentiment following the ferry disaster. But each voter entered the polling booth with other issues in mind that matter to them.
Thinking of my mom, I want stronger support for working mothers. The disadvantages that minorities face should be addressed, especially for women and those that are weak.
Looking at the big picture, regardless of the political party, I just hope that those who have been elected keep their promises and keep their ears open to the people.
I believe humble, honest politicians make the best politicians. I hope all of those representing the people think twice and even 3 times before making pledges. Instead of following trends and going after fame, I think the elected officials should look toward making the community and the country a better place.
The results are out and the people have spoken. The nation now waits to see if those they've chosen to represent them live up to expectations. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Well, in politics, it's never too early to look ahead to the next election. And the next big one here in Korea comes in 2017 when the nation will choose its next president.
Well, 2017 will be here in a heartbeat, I believe, for many. Our Son Jung-in looks into the crystal ball, which is Wednesday's election result, which may provide some hints about who might appear on the ballot.
Incumbent Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon's landslide victory has set the fates of 2 political big shots on opposite courses. Although Mayor Park has made it clear he has no intention to run in the next presidential race, some say the main opposition party may not have any better options when 2017 comes around.
The second phase of Park Won-soon's administrative policies will focus on integration. I will move in step with my supporters as well as with my opponents.
Speaking of opponents, Park's competitor and 7-term lawmaker Chung Mong-jun was defeated, a first in his 26-year political career, losing momentum toward becoming the ruling party's next presidential candidate. The beneficiary of his losses may be Gyeonggi-do Governor-elect Nam Kyung-pil, who now rises near the top of the list of possible ruling party candidates in the 2017 race.
This will be done with President Park Geun-hye and the residents of Gyeonggi-do. I will give my all for renovating this province and Korea.
Another name being tossed around as potential presidential candidate from the ruling party is Jeju Island Governor-elect Won Hee-ryong. Won, along with Nam, are seen as young politicians who will help the ruling party transition from its older generation base. As for the main opposition party, Chungcheongnam-do Governor re-elect An Hee-jung is garnering attention. After serving time in jail for accepting illegal funds in the 2002 presidential race, An, one of late President Roh Moo-hyun's closest confidants, won the Chungcheongnam-do governor seat in 2010. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
And the presidential office of Cheongwade also has something to say. It humbly accepts that the will of the people as reflected in the local election results.
Presidential office spokesperson Min Kyung-wook said Thursday that the administration would do its best to honor the collective voice of the Korean public and bring about reforms to the nation. The comments echo remarks made by President Park Geun-hye last month when she vowed to fundamentally overhaul the public sector and root out abnormal practices in society following the Seoul ferry disaster.
Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye has renewed her vow to increase the pace of both Korea's economic recovery and her reform drive. She was speaking at a luncheon with those of national merit and their families today, where the president said she will push ahead with her 3-year economic innovation plan and lay the foundation for a peaceful reunification with North Korea. Now, in the aftermath of a deadly ferry accident in April, President Park also pledged to root out ill practices in society to make Korea a safer place to live. The president's vow, one day after the ruling party's better-than-expected results in the local elections, is seen as her way of expressing determination to move forward in handling state affairs. Now, Korea's finance minister is concerned about the pronounced effect last month's ferry disaster has had on the domestic economy. He is calling on the business community to advance investment and employment. Now, Hyun Oh-seok told a group of local business leaders this Thursday that although Asia's 4th largest economy was on a moderate recovery track, the prolonged impact of the ferry sinking has been detected in the service sector and on consumption. Later this month, the finance ministry will announce its economic policy direction plans for the second half of the year, which will focus on raising the country's potential growth rate. And although the overall Korean economy continues on the path to recovery, gross national income is not keeping pace. In fact, last quarter's figure did climb, but at its slowest rate in 2 years. Our Hwang Ji-hye explains why.
It looks like the population's purchasing power in Korea is lagging behind the nation's economic growth. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the nation's gross national income rose a mere 0.5% in the first quarter from the previous one, the slowest pace of expansion in 2 years. But the central bank says that the slower growth is largely coming from seasonal factors.
Above all, smaller dividends earned by Korean companies from their investments overseas compared to the fourth quarter last year resulted in slower G&I growth.
A country's gross national income includes not just the domestic output, but also the income received from abroad. And with companies paying dividends in respect of their financial year that often ends at the year end, the gross national income usually drops in the first quarter compared to a quarter earlier. Overall economic activities remained to be on a track to recovery as the nation's gross domestic product grew 0.9% in the January to March period from the previous 3 months. That matches up with the growth of around 1% that the economy has posted over recent quarters. From a year earlier, Asia's 4th largest economy grew 3.9% in the first quarter this year, accelerating from 3.7% growth in the fourth quarter. The central bank expects the domestic economy to grow 4% for all of this year. 황지혜, Arirang News.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gon-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
In a common refrain, Tokyo has made renewed claims to Korea-controlled Dokdo Island, and Korea in response has condemned them. Japan's cabinet vice minister, along with Japanese lawmakers and officials, attended a rally in Tokyo on Thursday, calling for a resolution to the Dokdo dispute. But Seoul's foreign ministry says there's nothing to dispute, as the rocky islets of Dokdo are and have always been Korean territory. The ministry said in a statement that Tokyo should stop making provocative claims over the island. It also said bilateral ties between the two countries, as well as with other neighbors in the region, would continue to suffer so long as Japan continues to ignore the past atrocities it carried out. Isolated from much of the world, North Korea appears to be putting more energy in closer ties with two of their friends, Russia and China. The North state-run Nodong Shinmun Daily earlier this week gave high marks to a summit last month between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The Daily said their bolstered political and security ties would deal a blow to the United States. Last week, the paper ran another story calling for closer relations between Russia and China as a counter to the United States' pivot to Asia. Now, while the tensions in Ukraine dominated discussions between G7 leaders in Brussels on Wednesday, they also took time to address concerns over China's moves in the South and East China Seas. In a statement, the leaders said they opposed any attempt by any party to assert territorial or maritime claims through the use of intimidation. Although the joint statement did not specifically refer to any state by name, it was a not-so-veiled reference to China's maritime disputes with Vietnam, the Philippines, Japan, and others. The communiqué also condemned Russia for its intervention in Ukraine and warned of additional targeted sanctions should Moscow fail to dial back tensions. The G7 leaders meet again on Thursday. The new head of a U.S. organization that promotes relations with Asia says North Korea's nuclear program and humanitarian aid should be dealt with as separate issues. Frank Januzzi, president of the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Foundation, said that people-centered diplomacy through informal meetings is the key to approaching Pyongyang at this point. He also said he's not optimistic about a swift resumption of the six-party talks on the North's nuclear program, adding that Pyongyang does not seem to be open to negotiations. Januzzi was a key member of President Obama's first presidential campaign team, serving as the director for policies related to Korean Peninsula.
Now, New Zealand may become Korea's next FTA partner in the near future. Korea and New Zealand will sit down for a fresh round of free trade negotiations next week. Korea's trade ministry says the meeting, the 7th of its kind, will take place in Auckland from June 8th to the 13th. Now, the two sides will seek to narrow their differences on a range of issues, including intellectual property rights, country of origin, services, and investment. The last round of talks was held in March. Dozens of American companies have apparently been doing business with North Korea, now this despite strict U.S. sanctions on the regime. Bloomberg reports that 68 companies listed the Central Bank of DPRK as being in their supply chain in filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission. IBM and Hewlett-Packard were among those mentioned, and a spokesperson for Hewlett-Packard said investigations have been underway since January to determine whether the products contain North Korean minerals, but said none have been detected as of yet. IBM's filing said that its products may use gold processed in the north.
The 25th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre came and went, It looks like Chinese authorities did a solid job keeping the occasion under wraps.
But there was one memorial that brought out tens of thousands of people in remembrance, and that was in China's special administrative region of Hong Kong. Our Connie Lee takes you there.
A massive candlelight vigil lit up the night sky Wednesday night in a downtown park in Hong Kong. Tens of thousands of people remembered the bloody crackdown on democracy in Beijing's Tiananmen Square exactly 25 years ago in 1989. The demonstrators, including many who flew in from mainland China, called on Beijing to admit to the killings and account for what happened.
This is my first time participating in this sort of large-scale political event. I hope one day in China, citizens will truly have the freedom to demonstrate.
Although the former British colony, Hong Kong, has been under Chinese rule since 1997, it still enjoys civil liberties not allowed in mainland China today. Leading up to the anniversary, the Chinese government cracked down heavily on any mention of the massacre, prohibiting public discussion and censoring online references.
This is, of course, the 25th anniversary of Tiananmen Square crackdown. And what we've seen this year is an intensification of the crackdown against all sorts of people in civil society. And it's really wide in scope. It's not just confined to Beijing, it's nationwide.
In Beijing, dozens of activists were detained for attempting to commemorate the anniversary, and tourists and journalists in Tiananmen Square were searched. It was back in 1989, on June 4th, when hundreds of pro-democracy activists were removed by force and killed for protesting in the busy city square. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
And now on to some health news. Doctors have found evidence that suggests camels are indeed to blame for a deadly virus that has spread to humans. In fact, a research team at King Abdulaziz University in Saudi Arabia found identical viruses in a man who died of the Middle East respiratory syndrome or MERS and one of his camels.
The man reportedly fell sick after treating the camel for a runny nose. MERS, first detected back in 2012, is a fatal respiratory illness with flu-like symptoms. Some 680 cases of MERS have been confirmed in Saudi Arabia, and 282 people have died. The findings have been published in the New England Journal of Medicine.
Well, let's now get a check on the weather forecast by turning to Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle, it's been a cloudy day today, and if you know me, I like rain, so are we in for some?
Well, good evening. Although the skies look gloomy, there's no rain in the forecast, except for in the eastern regions where there's sporadic showers.
What about the weekend, of course, a three-day weekend, of course, tomorrow? Can we expect some turnaround in weather?
Well, all of the rain should clear out tonight, despite the fact that it's going to be a cloudy day. The daytime temperatures are expected to rise once again nationwide, especially here in the capital, where it'll get up to 30 degrees. And the long weekend begins here in Korea tomorrow, and by the looks of it, the weather should be mild with warm temperatures across the nation, so go ahead and make some outdoor plans. Now going over to our temperature readings, Seoul will start off the morning at 18 before reaching up to 30 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak up to 29 and 25 degrees. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island tops out at 24, Dokdo at 19, while Mangkungang tops out at 20. Well, that's all for Korea. Now here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching, and for our viewers in Korea, thank you for voting. You did make a difference. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Moon Gan-young. To those of you in other parts of the world, have a great start to your day. Now, tomorrow is Memorial Day here in Korea, so Daniel and I will not be here with you for the newscast, but we will see you back here same time Monday evening. Bye-bye.